Hello there, and welcome to All Painting My Way. My name's Rob. I hope you're having a great day. Right then, we're almost there now. This one is video sequence number 7. There's only one more to go after this, which is the final one. But this one is putting the highlights on the foreground bushes. Just at the very front of the painting, we have the bushes. We're now going to be putting the highlights on those, which just leaves the leaves on the tree for the final sequence video. But for now, as I say, hopefully you appreciate it. If you followed along from the very first video to this one, you'll appreciate how the painting has evolved until we get to this stage. So without further ado, we shall get on. This is it, video sequence number 7, highlights on the bushes. I hope you enjoy now. All right, we're just going to put some colouring on our bush that we've got here and our base bushes and foliage. Maybe this is a large shrub, maybe this is some small bushes down here. So basically just going to mix up, bear with me while I'm actually away from the actual canvas. Just going to mix up maybe a sort of light creamy sort of colour to represent some highlights, some blossom coming out on the actual bush. So I'm just going to use maybe some cad yellow, a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of burnt umber to start with, just to see what we end up with. Now basically just going to just twinkle that on the bush. Maybe just take a little bit of that off, soften it up a little bit. And think about the shapes in your bush. Think about your leaves. Again, when you're actually doing this, remember, I know I keep saying this, but it's really important to leave your dark areas, leave a lot of the darks, because it basically gives depth to the actual foliage or bush. And also what you want to do is just vary the colours slightly. You don't want to put all the same coloured highlights on, because that will just look really weird. Just vary each time you go back for some more paint. Just pull a little bit of a darker colour in and a little bit of lighter, and just vary the tones up and down. When you get near to the base of the actual plant or the shrub, bear in mind it will be a lot darker because there's less light there. So don't put real white highlights near the base of the plant, again, because it will just look weird. But they'll be lighter and brighter at the top and then get gradually darker as you come down. So bear with me while I'm away from the camera again. Just varying the colours. Again, I've just got some yellow ochre and some Indian yellow. Just on the tip, this is a filbert. Yeah, this is a number 4 filbert. Just very gently on the tip. And just remember the shapes. Think of the shapes that you're actually creating. And leave the darks, leave a lot of the dark areas there. But remember to mix the colours, keep varying the colours. Literally just touching round, because bushes will be in little clumps. You'll see them if you actually go out and look at a bush. They're in little clumps, so you need to highlight them in the same way, but you need to basically remember, as I said, the lights and the darks. Leave these dark areas in there. You need that dark area to make the light jump out at you. It's so important. Vary the colours, remember. Remember, it's getting darker towards the bottom. But leave a lot of these darks in. If you just look, you can just give more depth to the actual image itself. And then we're just going into a darker colour. When you get near the bottom, you're still keeping the shape. It's more dense towards the bottom. Think about the limbs, the way that the limbs are actually hanging over. And again, just fade it away into the bottom, because it will be very dark down there and not a lot of light at all. Come back to a little bit of a lighter colour. Again, not sure what this is going to show up like on the camera, but just randomly at the top, not all over, but just randomly near the top, because there will be, and on limbs that are near the edge, just some little sparkly ones. Just to make the colour stand out. Just sets the bush off. Just a few little, now and again, and I mean now and again, literally maybe near the top, just some pure titanium white. Not all over, just very sparingly. Very sparingly. Just to give those little twinkles of light. And then maybe that's it, and we'll leave it, don't overwork that. Just wipe out the brush, and then basically we're going to pick some other colours for the bushes down below. Just get another brush. Let's go for some Indian yellow and some cadmium yellow. Indian yellow, cadmium yellow. Let me see what that looks like. Again, just on the tip of the brush. Oh yes, that's a nice sparkly colour. We can bring that one as if the foliage is coming down here.
Again, keep turning the brush. Just vary the colour slightly. Get your shape of your bush in. Think about the format of the bush and the shape and where it actually is. Leave the dark areas, remember. Again, this is a low shrub, so it won't be like the bush here, which is disappearing. This one will actually continue to the base because it literally is just a small shrub. So the colour will go all the way down. Okay, and overlap. And then maybe we've got one that's a similar colour. Again, you're varying your paints when you're mixing them. Maybe that one is also here. Just put these little highlights on. Think of the shape of the bush. Again, don't do it perfectly round. Because it will look slightly odd. There's little clumps on bushes, different shapes within the actual bush itself. So just think where you're putting the lights and leave the dark areas. And again, bushes are not perfectly round. You're leaving the darks and leaving little clumps up in the air and all sorts. And then maybe what we can do is bring maybe a greener colour. Excuse me, when I'm away from the actual lens again, just mixing some paint. Again, maybe over here. Not sure if that's going to show up. No, let me just put some more yellow in there. I'll be back 1 second. I'm just mixing this paint. Let me just see what this is like. It's a bit better. Again, just think of the shape when you're putting this down. You can actually bring this one in front of the tree. See, we've actually just pushed that tree back. But obviously remember the colour will get darker. Let the paint run out on the brush as you come back, because it will get darker because it's behind the tree. And then basically just put those shrubs in, those bushes. Again, it can actually fade when it gets down below the tree. very, very faint. Just gently tap with your brush. But there's not a lot of light source back there, remember, because it's at the root of the tree, the base of the tree. And it's going to be a lot darker and a lot more dense at the bottom. And then maybe what we can have here is a sort of, let's go for a sort of a more of a redder colour maybe. Can even pull some of these colours up and just blend them all together a bit more. Just helps soften everything together. Again, you need to basically just keep at this and stand back, look at it, and if something jumps out at you and just doesn't look right, then go back and adapt it, change it. Just change the colour slightly, soften it, or put a bit more detail in, or just soften the edges. You just get a dry brush and maybe go over if it looks too harsh, like there's a complete brush mark left over, then just get a dry brush and soften it. Just blend it into the background. I don't mean the background as in like this background, but I mean blend it into the background of the actual shrub. I'm sure you understand what I mean. If you don't, then I apologise. But basically, let's have a sort of we don't want anything too vibrant, or I don't want to put a bright red bush or anything like that. Maybe go for I don't know, what should we go in there with, a sort of a pink or a red sort of colour, something like that. Let's bear with me while I just wipe the brush out. Again, this is oil paint, it is forgiving, remember, try something, if it doesn't work you can always scrape it off and try again. Even this far into the painting, if you put something down, then obviously scrape it off with a knife and then dry it out with a towel, and then put the background on again, and then put the highlight over the top. Don't be frightened of it. So bear with me again while I'm away from the camera. I just need to mix up. Let me just get a little bit of Naphthol red, and a little bit of Indian yellow. A little bit of burnt umber. We can try this colour and see what happens. Oh, that looks very sparkly. But maybe I'm thinking it's a little bit too dark, so let me just put a little bit of white in there and a little bit of cad yellow. I need to get a little bit more cad yellow. Excuse me while I'm away from the screen again. Just mix this up. So we come back, we put a little bit more cad yellow in and a touch of white. And again, think of the shapes. Overlap one with the other. Think of the shapes of the bush. Keep on going, blend them together. Remember, bushes don't just sit side by side, they do overlap one another. Again, it will get darker towards the bottom, but because these are shrubs, we are going to put them right near the bottom. Don't be frightened to just put the odd little bit here and there, just to vary the colours. Basically, we've got a base of shrubs down there. As I say, you can see all of the darks within the lights. It basically separates, gives more depth to the actual image. Decide where your shrub is going. Decide that one's going to overlap there. And then basically what you can do is go back to your smaller brush. Bear with me 1 second. Let's get a very small filbert, short-handled filbert, and let's just put a few little touch of highlights. Nothing drastic. Again, but you're just coming round. Bear with me. You're just coming round. Just a few little highlights. Just a few little sparkly bits in certain areas, just near the top. Again, the bottom is going to be completely dark because it's in the shadows, it's in the shade. So again, you don't want to go too mad. It's not a complete sunny day. There's no big sunshine up in the sky shining down. These are basically just sort of like reflected light, just a tiny little bit of light, just highlighting the tips. Sure, we can set this red one off nice. Finish that off, a few little sparkles. This gives a little bit more tone, different values within the colouring. Just helps separate the mid-tones. And again, just vary from bush to bush. Obviously the tips of the bushes are at the top. Obviously they're going to get more highlight than anything further down, but just think of where your light is actually shining. You don't need a lot of these highlights, just a few, just touch them here and there. And then we come back to the one by the tree. Just a few, not a lot. There won't be any down here because it's in the dark. It's reflected light would be back there. It's very dark back there, hardly any light at all. Just set off the edge of the bushes. A little bit of light. And then hopefully, as you can see, it just defines different bushes, different colours. And then what you can do, let's get a, bear with me 1 second, let's get a thin brush. I'm just going, again, excuse me while I'm away from the screen, I'm just trying to get a very thin brush, a little detailed round brush. I'm just going to get a little bit of brown, a little bit of burnt umber, and just a little bit of the clear gel, and I'm just going to thin out the actual paint so it's fairly thin. And then what you want to do, just every now and again, very gently, I'm not even sure if you can see that on the camera, just flick up so it looks like you've got the odd twig that you see through a bush. If you actually go out into your garden or go out into the street and have a look at a bush, there's twigs and bits that are actually sticking up. Now you've got to be careful with this. Don't overdo it. Don't put them all sticking up in the air, because it will just look like someone's gone along and stuck some sticks straight in the ground. But just very lightly. Again, I'm not even sure if this will show up on the actual camera, but just very gently. If these are showing up, then great. If they're not, I do apologise, but they're very, very faint. You literally just want to do as if there's a few sticks and twigs just between the foliage sticking up. Just come through with your brush and just flick, just distort slightly, just a few little twig areas. Excuse my hand if it's in front of the camera, but just now, this is it's a very thin brush, this, just the odd twig here and there just sticking up just helps. Just helps break up the image slightly. As you can see there, I've gone into the red and it's pulled the red up, and I don't actually want that. So what I'm actually going to do, just get a little dry brush, just very gently. As I said, all paint's very forgiving. Just very gently, just blend that away. Very gently. And what we can do, remember our base colour, which was a bit of yellow on there, just tap that back in. Not too much, but just enough to cover up, diffuse what was there before. Again, it's not anything critical, it's just the whole paint, very forgiving, as I said. So just touch that in again. Again, just blend anything you're not sure of, just blend it away. And then basically that's your bush area. I can actually just bring this base of the bush down a little bit more, just very, very gently, just very gently touching a little bit of shape and pattern. But it is dark, it is near the bottom of the bush, not going to show a lot up. Leave those dark areas there. So basically that's your bush areas just gone in. So all we have to do now is basically put some leaves on the tree, and then that'll be basically all done. Okay then.